The hoard is likely to be one of the largest hoards that we've ever encountered, not just in Britain, but perhaps in Europe. Find of a lifetime. My initial reaction was this is an exciting discovery, but it was only really when we went back to excavate the hoard and we opened up a much larger area that I think Peter and I and all of the team realised we were onto something really exciting. When we opened up and we realised there was much more material than we originally could see, we understood that this was a hoard that was, of a kind of scale and size that, is exceptional for Britain and probably even Europe. The hoard includes over 800 individual items, and that's lots of different kind of material. The vast majority of that material is what we call horse harness, those things like bridle bits, bits of decoration for horses or ponies as they really were in the Iron Age. What's unusual about the hoard is it also includes lots of pieces of the vehicles that came with them, so the bits that held the wheels on, and actually the tyres themselves. We have 28 iron tyres from those vehicles. What we've also discovered from this hoard, which again makes it very unusual, is that it looks like those vehicles are perhaps four-wheeled wagons rather than the sort of two-wheeled chariots that most people are perhaps a bit more familiar with from the British Iron Age. It also included two vessels, a cauldron and a wine mixing bowl, and also some things like iron spearheads, so a whole collection of material. The bowl is really interesting because it's decorated with coral. We think that coral probably comes from the Mediterranean. It's very unusual for an object like that to have coral decoration on it. And what that tells us is the kind of links and connections that people had, across Europe to be able to get the material to decorate an object in that way. And it's an incredibly elaborate object, so this is something that would have impressed anybody in Iron Age Britain who could see and use that kind of vessel. In terms of the dating of the material, we're still waiting on scientific dating to be exactly sure of when it dates from. We can look at the material that we have at the moment and it probably dates from the early to mid-1st century AD, so that's a few decades perhaps before the Roman conquest of northern Britain.
So Peter Heads found the first signal of the find whilst metal detecting in the field with the landowner's permission, and we're really grateful to him for being really efficient at reporting the find and working with Durham University with a plan to excavate it and take it through the treasure process.
I was amazed when I kind of heard about the find. Tom rang me in the morning to say what had been found. I'd worked on Iron Age sites before. When I started my career, I worked on a chariot burial site. And as Tom explained what had been found, I kind of realised how important it was. I was able then to get in touch with our commissions team in Historic England. We all understood just how important this was, both for the university, for the British Museum, for Historic England, and for the nation.
The deposit at Melsonby actually consisted of two deposits, one larger one, but also this separate deposit. We were unfortunate to be able to excavate that as a block, so we could remove that from site and excavate that in the laboratory. That's really useful because that means we can do it under even more careful conditions.
For a conservator, it's not really the size that matters. What's most important are the materials that something's made of. And in this case, the find is made of a lot of metals. They take up salts in the ground, and that can cause them to corrode very rapidly. So we need to stabilize them as quickly as possible. With the block, we could see in the field that we had a series of very fragile copper alloy tubes, and they would be damaged if we excavated them. So in that case, we wrapped it in plaster bandage and then lifted it out of the ground. The first thing was to try to understand what was inside it. So we took it to Southampton and had it CT scanned there, which gave us a sense of what we might encounter.
We've now decided that whilst we've removed the soil from around the block, that we won't remove all the items from it because they're fused together in a kind of bundle of objects. And that's really interesting because it shows how they were deposited in the ground, probably in some kind of wrapping or bag. So we can see exactly how these things were kind of deposited in one go. And so we're hoping that will stay together as a block where you can see the finds in it but not actually prized apart. The process of actually excavating those finds, of finding more and more the elaborate objects and exciting objects, I think all of us were quite awestruck as we were digging it, that this just went on and on.
So my reaction to the find when it was discovered is a feeling of awe. Awe in both senses of the word. Wonder, because it's quite incredible to have all this material preserved together and to be able to excavate it. But also a slight feeling of fear. This is an awful lot of material that we've got to record, to be responsible for. Our working theory at the moment is that it's been gathered together and maybe heated in a sort of big bonfire or perhaps a pyre. And this has deliberately destroyed the items, and then they've been thrown into this big ditch. And so some of them broken further through this process, and then there were stones put into the ditch as well, and that's damaged them even more. And why this happened, is something that you could debate for many years, but we think it's a deliberate taking these items out of circulation. So stopping those vehicles from being used, stopping the harness from being worn by the animals, and showing that you've got the wealth and power to be able to destroy that much material. This find, in terms of the significance for understanding Iron Age Britain, it's high up there because we have the context information. So although sometimes it can seem like a wealth of objects is really important for giving us new information, it's how those objects went together, what happened to them, how they've been buried, their environment, that is significant in this case.
One of the interesting aspects of this hoard is this is from northern Britain, it's from Yorkshire. Now we tend to think, when we're Iron Age scholars, that it's the wealthy material, the wealthy individuals who are in the south of Britain. It's now clear that we have individuals who are incredibly wealthy and have incredible connections, probably across northern Britain, perhaps across Europe, that they can amass this amount of wealth and then destroy it and deposit it within a ditch. It's worth remembering that the kind of material we have, it looks impressive now, but in the Iron Age this is the most valuable kind of material you can have. So 7 wagon vehicles potentially, this is a huge amount of wealth. So whoever's depositing this material is destroying an incredible amount of valuable objects. So they're potentially deliberately saying they can consume, if you like, this kind of wealth and just destroy it, perhaps as part of an event like a funeral. Research on the hoard at Melsonby is only really just beginning. A hoard of this kind of scale takes a significant work to just document all the finds that need to be photographed, x-rayed and recorded, and all of that material needs to be conserved. So we need to stabilise it so that that material doesn't corrode or degrade any further before it gets deposited in a museum. That takes a considerable amount of time and painstaking work, so it's actually taken 2 years to undertake that work before we can then actually analyse a lot of that material. The hoard at Melsonby is incredibly significant and will lead to lots of re-evaluation of our understanding of Iron Age Britain.
This find isn't just nationally important, it's internationally important. What I want to see happen to this hoard is I'd love to see it go on display. I'd love the public to be able to see it, to be able to appreciate it, to be amazed by it. I want the public to just understand how rich the past was, how rich the detail is. But also, it's all about telling stories. You tell us what you think happened, what you think happened at the event that led to these things being deposited in the ground. What do you think was going on? What can you see in this block? And I hope it's kind of displayed in that spirit.